When it comes down to coilovers, there are a whole bunch of brands that we've talked about in the past. We talked about brands like KW, ST, Tane, BC Racing, Fortunato, Airlift, AccuAir, and like pretty much every other brand under the sun. We talked a whole lot about the brand history on them, except for one. And there's one that a lot of you buy more than any out there, and that would be the eBay Special, which really isn't a brand more than it is just a term that we use. eBay coilovers is just like this general term for coilovers that people buy that really don't have a brand name to them, but you stumble across them because you're shopping around online and they're like $400 and you really just want to save some money and you're thinking to yourself, would anyone really care? Would anyone really know if I snag these up? I mean, like there's other brands like Raceland that are like $400, so would it really be that bad if I just decided to run with the eBay Special? And then I'll just tell everyone the brand name all confident like, so they like think it's like expensive and high end, they just haven't heard of it. But we decided to dive into a little bit of the backstory and the history about the eBay coilover and where they came from, why they exist, where they're made, who they're made by, and why they are so popular. I'm Jales from Fitment Industries, and before we go ahead and get right into this video, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell. And if you're looking for some name brand wheels, tires, or suspension, don't forget to check out fitmentindustries.com. Anyway, let's get into it. eBay coilovers are something that we have actually touched on a little bit in the past, and it's kind of like that entry-level coilover thing. Now, eBay coilovers originally came from the original premise of what eBay actually is. Now, if you're not too familiar with eBay or don't really remember from back in the day, eBay used to be an absolutely massive powerhouse, and still is pretty much a massive powerhouse to this day, built around auction items that you could bid on and purchase from other people. Basically making a way to buy products from an individual person without having to meet up face to face. It's like the late 90s, early 2000s, a whole new world. And what ended up happening is that people started to turn this into more of an actual business over time, creating an eBay account or profile built as an actual business account rather than just a personal account. And what eventually ended up happening is that this opened up the doors to people selling just about everything and anything that they possibly could. And that of course included automotive parts. And when you look back at it and break it down, one of the biggest automotive parts really hitting the scene at the same time with this whole e-commerce thing was coilovers. Now in 2005, a lot of things started switching from just regular lowering springs to coilover suspension. And as a result, you had a lot of brands starting to pop up on eBay. But these were like the real deal. They were the big boys of the aftermarket suspension world. The ones that already had a name and reputation built for themselves for a little while. And it worked for a little while, just because there really wasn't another place like eBay at the time. But eventually over time, there were companies that just realized that like, hey, this isn't really working out all that, you know, like we sell $3,000 coilovers on eBay. I wonder what would happen if we just lowered the price a bit. But then the conversation happened that was probably something really close to like, well, you know, if we lowered the price, that would kind of like hurt the brand a little bit, wouldn't it? And then like it went something like this. They're like, yeah, but hear me out, all right? What if we just didn't like put a brand name on it?
And the other guy was sitting there like, you know, that just might work.
And that's what happened, or at least pretty damn close to what happened. The dialogue was probably a little bit different.
Probably not though.
But people ended up going into making coilovers and decided, what if we rebranded or private labeled our coilovers with cheaper parts and components and then just sold them as a completely different name on eBay? And that's where a lot of these eBay coilovers truly started. And these brands that really kind of came out of nowhere that have some of the most ridiculous names that you've ever heard of started to gain popularity. eBay coilovers are pretty much meant to be or meant to hit one specific market, and that is the entry-level automotive consumer that is looking for one thing only, and that is something to lower their car that isn't going to break the bank, with really no other focus other than looks. And obviously, lo and behold, it worked. We're here talking about it. So yeah, a lot of people do go out to eBay to pick up their first set of coilovers because they really don't know where else to look. And they haven't managed to stumble across a place that sells aftermarket wheels, tires, or suspension, that creates educational and entertaining content all about cars and, you know, wheels, tires, and suspension.
Spoiler, it's us, Fitment Industries.
No, they decided to type in the old Google search bar, what coilovers for Acura TL, and they managed to hit eBay. Now, eBay coilovers are usually privately labeled from other brands. A lot of brands out in the suspension community do private label their own suspension components, or at least outsource some of that product using different materials in a different factory for a cheaper cost, and then turn around and sell it as a different brand. But if you're looking for a cheap coilover, does that mean that eBay coilovers are that bad? Well, it all comes down to what you really care about and what you think is important when you're buying a coilover. Because if price is the only thing that you're comparing it to, then probably not. But the thing that you have to remember is that a lot of these are rebranded, private labeled suspension components, less than superior quality coilovers, and you're going to have to take a risk no matter what with what you are buying. There are actually a lot of videos out there right now that have taken an eBay coilover, for instance, and have broken it down, taken the time to explain all of the parts individually, the differences in quality compared to a name brand coilover, and go over what to expect if you are planning on picking up something like an eBay brand coilover. Specifically for the reason so you don't go and buy them and then get extremely disappointed when you get them. And what it really comes down to is eBay coilovers are exactly what you think they are. And you're never going to get something that you don't expect, because unfortunately, that's just not how the world works. You're not going to be surprised with some crazy coilover that has a bunch of adjustability and has all these different things that go into a quality piece of suspension. You're going to be looking at something very generic, something very universal, because what it all comes down to, it's the price. It's what coilover can be cheaper. One of the things to keep in mind is that eBay coilovers are not going to go away anytime soon, and private labeling and all that stuff is also not going to go away anytime soon. And I could probably give you 1,001 reasons as to why you would want to stick with a name brand coilover, or any aftermarket part for that matter, besides an eBay coilover. But let's be honest, it all comes down to you and your decisions. But if you don't care about anything that has to do with quality or adjustability or spring rates or anything that has to do with what kind of material is being used to make your coilovers, then it's really not that bad of a thing. And if you're not spending a ton of money on a car and you're just looking for something to lower your car with, then go crazy. One of the big things to remember, however, like I said, don't be surprised with what shows up in the box on your doorstep a few days later. But I would recommend, if you're looking for something to lower your car, to keep some kind of performance and quality in mind as well, because suspension is what connects you and your car to, like the ground. Pretty important component. If you cheap out on that, you really risk making your car ride worse. But if you had some experience with eBay coilovers, let us know what you have found down in the comment section below, and let us know what your thoughts are as well. But other than that, thank you guys so much for watching. And if you're looking for wheels, tires, or suspension, don't forget to check out fitmentindustries.com. I'm Giles from Fitment Industries. Don't forget to subscribe. We will see you later. Peace.